Welcome to Tech London, a show featuring interviews with London's top creative entrepreneurs, startups, investors, design agencies, internet marketers, and freelancers that make up the Tech London online community, which mostly lives on the Slack instant messaging platform. We rotate through both hosts and guests for these interviews, so you have the chance to hear from multiple perspectives on London's tech scene.
Hello, folks, and welcome to this week's edition of the Tech London podcast. And as Jonathan just explained in the intro, we interview people doing techie things all around London. And this is from a gigantic Slack channel. So as Jonathan said, if you're not in the Slack channel, go to the techlondon.io website and join it. And here we go. So I don't know how to get from there to here, but I've got Laurence, who is wandered into our office and said, I have this like travel thing. And I was like, that sounds really interesting. What is it? And I've read loads about it. So I'm going to try and get like 20 minutes worth of reading into a 20-minute podcast. But if you, correct me if I'm wrong here, Laurence, but if you travel, This will save you a shitload of anxiety about where your COVID documents are, where your, bits and pieces are. So how begin the rage. Also for digital nomads, that's the main reason we're here.
Yeah. So people who travel a lot, like away from home 6 to 8 months of the year or longer, have really unique problems. And as you were saying, right now, travel in the time of COVID, the amount of paperwork you have to have is completely insane. And so I'll give you the example of a customer of ours. And so he was about to take a cruise, right? And the cruise was from Barcelona to Orlando, Florida, stopping in Malaga and stopping in the Bahamas. So there were all these elderly couples, waiting to board, right? And they each had like this fat folder full of paperwork. And they should have been really excited because this was like the cruise of a lifetime, right? And they couldn't find the paperwork they needed because, there's the passenger locator form, and then there's all the documentation they had to just get into Spain, and then there's the stuff that they had to have in order to get on the boat, and then there's all these tests, and they were turning upset and frustrated, right? Whereas this customer of ours, he uses this thing we have called the vault. And the vault contains scans, PDFs, photographs, whatever, of all of your documentation and for anything. And it also can tell you like when that document's going to expire. So for instance, a lot of people don't know this, but the document you get from the government that proves that you're vaccinated, that document itself is only good for 30 days. And a lot of people think, oh, I have that document. Oh no, it expired. So basically, our friend being our friend, such a lovely guy, he helped like 20 elderly couples get their paperwork sorted out. And so many of them were like deer in the headlights that, one woman just dropped her folder and her documentation went all over the floor. So yes, so the vault is definitely right now, especially traveling during a pandemic, the vault is definitely something that, makes your life incredibly easy because it's all on your phone. You just show it, even QR codes, etc.
Even before COVID, I would, unless I was traveling with my friend Janine or my wife, who just organise all these things because I don't know how to, I would have anxiety attacks.
Oh, and absolutely. And the other thing about it, though, is, of course, the vault, you can access the vault online, but, of course, you can sync it to your phone if you want to do that in case you're, out of range. And but the other thing is, like, for instance, one of the things that we always recommend people put in the vault is their passport. And they say, well, if I lose my passport, that's not going to get me in or out of a country, is it? I say, no, but ask anybody who works at a consulate. If you have a photograph of it, it makes getting your temporary passport so much faster. So there's all kinds of things that people use it for. And, you can put your driving licenses in, you can put your visas in, you can, whatever. And we recommend it, actually. One of our customers travels so much in the year, he keeps things like his car registration information. so that if he's away from home and he doesn't get the reminder that he needs to register his car, he's got it on his phone. And then you want to talk about the tax thing, Bernie?
I do. That's what I was trying to find a way in, because I know a load of people who, I mean, a load of people in our network are co-working people, and they're co-living people, and a lucky subset of that, they just wander around from co-working space to co-working space, and they work online and all that kind of digital nomad stuff.
Yep.
And just through all the events we've organized in like Brussels and Paris and things over the years, just anything to do with which countries have VAT and which don't. And then people come to a country and they stay there because they're working on this event, and they have to like go across, like friends in Poland go across to the Ukraine, have lunch, come back just to get there.
Yeah. No, I know.
All
so
that
let me give you a really good example. So as you know, a lot of countries are discovering that it's valuable for their economy to create visas for digital nomads, right? So one of the countries that's really welcoming to digital nomads is Croatia, which has got, like stunning coastlines. It's absolutely gorgeous, right? And so you can get a digital nomad visa to work there for a year. However, the visa just says you're permitted to be there for a year. If you're in Croatia for more than 183 days, even one day over, you become legally a tax resident. Okay. Now, what that means is you could possibly end up owing tax on 100% of your income for that year to Croatia, as well as, if you're British, to the UK. So and people get confused between visas and tax and tax status. And, if you're going to set up to work someplace, you have to understand both. So of course, one of the things that our tax compliance service does is it just tracks how many days you've been in any particular tax jurisdiction. And this gets really fun if you're in the United States, because there are tax residency rules for the United States as a whole, but almost all of 50 states have their own tax residency rules. So you could end up owing money to the US as well as owing money to the state of New York, if you were working in Manhattan. So of course, our tax compliance service tracks all that for you. You don't have to worry about it.
So how does that actually work? Do I just put because I was reading about this on the website, and this is not the most exciting podcast you're ever going to listen to, folks, but this is really interesting in terms of like moving around, because we're like people in our company, we meet up every 2 months for a retreat,
right? And
some people stay a bit longer and stuff like this. So I am petrified of this kind of stuff. There's one friend of mine who got hit with like I want to say 90,000 tax bill because she just didn't realize that she couldn't work where she was and stuff with this. Another friend of ours, Hector, who quite a lot of you know, is based in New York, but because he moved there with his wife, and he runs his own company, but he had to go and work in Canada because if he was caught working in New York on his online business, he would be liable for all the stuff we're talking about. So I suppose the question would be like, go on. Explain.
So here's, I think you were heading towards, how does this work?
I was panicked. That's why I was rambling.
Yeah, technically, it's really elegant. So let's say you enter a trip into Mia Bazo. Mia Bazo is the name of the product, by the way. You enter a trip into Mia Bazo. Okay, now that trip now triggers a whole lot of stuff. So as soon as you leave for that trip, all right, it starts tracking you for tax compliance. It starts tracking you for visa compliance. So you go to the tax thing and it tells you how many days you've been in which tax jurisdiction this year. It tells you how many more days you have left on that. Okay. If you go to visa compliance, it tells you how long you've been in a particular visa area. Okay. So Schengen, it's all one area. Now, before Brexit, as a Brit, you could go to any country in the Schengen area for as long as you like, right? Well, as long as you don't incur taxes. That's a totally different thing. So like if you were used to going to your second home in Finland for 3 months, right? And then on the way home, flying to see friends in France or something like that. You can't do that anymore because 90 days, now that we're not in the EU, 90 days is all you're allowed in the Schengen area in any 180-day period. So, and a lot of people don't realize that. A lot of people have already been, just doing what they always do. And then suddenly they find they're denied entry or they're expelled or they're fined or all three, because things have changed. So that's why, keeping track of all this stuff, it just gets crazy when you travel all the time. And the whole point of Mia Bazo is you don't have to do that. You can you put the trips in and the thing just starts chugging away for you.
There's a whole load of stuff that has just come up with because of not being in Brexit, that we've just, particularly people in my generation that have just always been in the European Union, wandered around with an E111 card and never had their passport stamped, and it just it's shocking, and it's only because people in our company are so red hot on all these different jurisdiction laws that I even know about it. So if I worked in a crayon company, we'd never have these conversations.
Yeah, no, and the thing that used to terrify me is I'm a dual U.S. UK citizen, right? And of course, because I worked for ARM and we launched all our products in Silicon Valley, I'd spend a lot of time in the States. And of course, since I still have some family in the States, I would add on family time before or after. And I was always terrified by the tax thing, right? Because if I spent even one day more than 90 days in the United States in a year, I would have owed tax on 100% of my income, both to the US and to the UK. It would have left me about 25% of it. So I wish I'd had this tool.
So the other thing is so we know a lot, just mainly because of our connection with co-working spaces, is a lot of companies have just booted the commute, as we like to say.
Yes.
And gone remote, and you hear all these. I mean, in the mainstream media, you hear Facebook has ditched all its offices, and Royal Bank of Scotland has downsized its property portfolio to a cupboard in Finsbury Square.
Yeah.
So there's those people that they've kind of never had access to this digital nomad lifestyle, and,
right.
and they do unglamorous jobs that don't involve traveling around Thailand with a laptop and making your money online.
Yeah.
And they've just entered this new phase of travel or working. And I think, have you had any people come on board who are in that oh my God, this is I would have made so many mistakes if I hadn't had this?
Oh, we are hearing this all over because, as you say, people are now working remotely. Even people with not glamorous jobs are working remotely. And so I wanted to write a blog about this. So I went online and I just typed in the word workation. And you would not believe the number of places around the world that are suddenly setting themselves up. They were just resort hotels, but now they're all set up for digital nomads. They're all set up for people who say to their boss, listen, I'm not coming into the office anymore anyway. Why can't I work from Malaga? We hear this all the time, is that people who never had to worry about tax or visa compliance because they didn't spend that much time away from home because they only had 5 weeks of holiday per year, are suddenly wanting to work someplace other than their own four walls. There's an explosion of it, basically. And from there are two parts of Mia Bazo that fulfill an employer's duty of care. Do you want to talk about this? Is this interesting?
That is interesting. I mean, it's not interesting, but it is very relevant to what we're talking about.
Okay.
And the information I'd like people to receive.
Okay. So, that an employer has a duty of care for people who work for them, who travel, right? And two of the things we offer, which one is travel tracking and the other is travel security. And the travel tracking thing is amazing because if you're the administrator of your Mia Bazo account, you can see where anyone in your company is at any given time. You have a single view of everybody. And you'll also know whether they are where they're supposed to be. So, like a passive travel tracking is just by your itinerary, right? So all that tells you is where they're supposed to be, not where they actually are. Okay. So what our travel tracker does is before you get on the plane, you'll get a message, Bernie, that says, "Are you about to get on flights 367 from Heathrow to New York?" And you say, "Yes, I am." And then the system actually tracks your plane. So we have real-time flight status data. So actually know when you're landing, if you've been delayed, anything like that. And when you get there, you'll get another message saying, "Have you completed this segment?" "Yes, I have completed this segment." Things like that. And with the travel security, we give you, like, let's say you're going to a country for the first time, and we give you all the safety information that you need to know about staying safe in that area, but also like when the banking hours are, or, what are the driving laws, things like that. So that's all part of the travel security package. And then also we do a daily check-in, daily safety check-in. So if you're the administrator, you'll get a message saying, "Bernie has failed to check in. Bernie has failed to confirm." So, then oh, okay, now we need to track down Bernie. And then you go to the travel tracking and it says, "Well, he checked into the flight, but we didn't have confirmation." So you get a failure to confirm that you actually landed, that kind of thing. And, just in terms of, the bottom line is, when it comes to duty of care, if somebody's traveling for you and they're injured or killed, your company is going to be liable. The question is, can you mitigate the liability by showing everything you did to keep that person safe? That's where this stuff comes in.
So how does that apply? You may not know this because I'm putting you on the spot here. So in our company, we have people who are employed and there's people who are employed as freelancers.
Yeah.
And we'll kind of all go to the same destination. And some are freelancers who are working with us, and that's why we're at the team meeting. And some are,
I'll check that, Bernie, but I believe it doesn't matter. If they're traveling for you, you have a duty of care.
Yep.
Yeah. And there's one last thing I wanted to point out before we go. We're super mad, obsessive environmentalists at Mia Bazo. And so one of the services that we promote the most is the climate impact one. So using our climate impact service, you can calculate really accurately the carbon footprint of your properties, your vehicles, and any mode of travel. Okay. So that you can, and the great thing about this, because a lot of companies now are having to prove, okay, that they're actually sustainable, that they are, in other words, companies won't buy from you if you're not mitigating your climate impact. So your carbon footprint calculator, you can make it public. You can make it public on our site, or through an API, you can make it public on your own site. And it's not a snapshot; it's the actual table that changes as data comes in. And the other thing you can do through Mia Bazo is you can also purchase climate offset. You could do it a one-time purchase, or you do it monthly. Like if my carbon footprint goes over X tons of CO2, to automatically offset it, things like that. Or of course you could buy carbon offset from anybody else and just enter that into your calculator manually.
Yeah, but can you do that carbon? Because this is the other thing that got my attention, is because when I sort of go to people, I go, "Oh yeah, we're going here, we're flying there," and there's several people in my network who are not radical. They're just saying we're not doing plane journeys anymore.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that was even before COVID.
Yeah.
And I'd say, "Oh, do you want to come to this cool conference?" And they'd be like, "I can only fly one plane a year." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And I'm a conscientious citizen. And,
right.
And I was like, "Oh, but how are you going to get there?" Or they will only travel by train. And it made me feel like, okay, so I should be I should be doing something about this, because if it's come up in conversation in those circles, and I'm still flying Concorde for
Yes.
breakfast in Paris. So I need to address my behavior. So
Well,
how does that actually
there
work?
are ways to cut your carbon footprint, even if you have to fly. Because, for instance, if you're going to fly a Dreamliner, right, that is going to burn 30% less fuel than a 737.
Beautiful machines.
Yeah. Oh, aren't they? Yes, we do love our travel, don't we, Bernie?
If you haven't been on a Dreamliner, so to be like first world here.
Yeah.
The air conditioning on there, like when you get off, you don't have jet lag because the air is so well managed.
Is so well filtered or whatever. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Amazing. Okay. See, now I know something I didn't know.
It's like being able to get drunk and not have a hangover. It's at that level. So any other little bits to will you get back to say something else about the carbon footprint there, because that is very important. Sorry.
Yeah, no. That's basically it. So right now you can calculate, publish, and offset your carbon footprint. And coming in January, we're launching the software for reducing your carbon footprint. So it will actually tell you things like, this is the lowest carbon footprint way of getting from A to B. So you can put in a potential trip, okay, and it'll tell you that the least amount of CO2 if you do it this way. Right. And so one of our customers is actually thinking of implementing a carbon budget, which you'll also be able to do with the new software. So he's thinking of giving each of his departments a carbon budget for the year. And if they schedule travel, he'd say, well, okay, you could do that, but you've just used up 50% of your carbon budget for the year. So it's a way of making the company more socially conscious about how they travel.
That's great. Just before we jump, because this is built on the back of a load of other software you already had. Can you explain that thing? So it is a startup, but it's not a startup.
You're absolutely right. Thank you. Yes. So this business that we're in, travel risk management, we have a sister company called Voyage Manager. Voyage Manager has been on the market for 11 years. So it's a very, very, very stable platform. The only thing is, though, Voyage Manager is set up for large organizations, large enterprises, right? Whereas Mia Bazo is self-service. And our target market is individuals and SMEs. So the software is super, super stable. The only thing that's new about it is the user interface for the self-service platform. And so that's kind of why we know as much as we know about the industry.
Yeah, I wanted to get that in there. So where can people find you online and get involved?
Okay, so it's miabazo.com. So miabazo.com.
And where did that name come from? I've been wanting to ask that all the way along.
It means my base in Esperanto. And obviously, as we all know, Esperanto was that wonderful created language that was supposed to be the international language. And Esperanto itself means one who hopes. So we've decided that we hope that we will make the planet a better place with Mia Bazo.
I'd completely forgotten about that language until you said it. I remember that coming up years ago.
Yeah.
I'm now going to have to go and Wikipedia that to remind me of what's going on. But listen, Laurence, thank you very much for your time. It was a delight to meet you. And we will, I'm going to go and download this and get this going to organize my brain. Thanks very much for listening today, folks. We will see you next week. Going into the new year, we'll be talking loads about smart cities and 5Gs. 5G as in the thing. Something that's come a lot in back channels and conversations here is like, how come I can't get 5G on my phone? What will actually happen when I get 5G? How will that affect my business and everything like that? And I don't know any of those questions, the answers to any of those questions. So I'm going to go and find out. And also smart cities is something that's been around for years, but as you hear around, COVID has accelerated the future of work by 10 years or whatever it is this week. And there's a lot of technology plugging into, as in London where we are, the suburbs have come alive. People are staying to work in their neighborhoods and not traveling to town. So the whole configuration of how we move around and connect with our communities has changed. And that is red hot for pretty much everyone in the Tech London community. So we're going to be investigating that. If you have something to say about that, please get in touch either in the Slack channel or just Google Bernie J. Mitchell, and I'll hook up with you that way. Thanks again for your time, Laurence. Everyone say goodbye.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me, Bernie. Take care.
You've been listening to the Tech London Show. If you're interested in joining the community or even making an appearance on this show, make sure you join our Slack group over at techlondon.io. Till next time.